All right, so you're ready to dive deep into small talk. I bet you're looking for ways to really boost your English conversation skills, right? Especially those casual settings, right?
Yeah, small talk can definitely be tricky.
It can be. Luckily, we've got this awesome script for an educational video all about small talk, made especially for people learning English.
Yeah, we'll be breaking down all those tricky social situations you might find yourself in, going way beyond the basic stuff, too.
Absolutely. We're going to give you real strategies to help you rock at small talk, even if English isn't your first language. So let's jump right in.
Sounds good.
First things first, what exactly is small talk? I mean, how does the script define it?
Well, they call it casual, lighthearted conversation.
Yeah.
You know, the kind of chats you might have about, oh, I don't know, the weather or what you
Oh,
did over
yeah.
the weekend.
Right, right.
The-
Stuff that's pretty easy to chat about.
Exactly. It's that initial chat that, kind of sets the tone. Before you jump into anything too serious or controversial, think of it like building a bridge, conversationally.
Ooh. I like that, a conversational bridge. So it's all about making that initial connection before you dive into the deeper stuff. Now, speaking of bridges, how do you even start building one? How do you start a conversation in the first place?
Yeah, that's the tricky part for a lot of people. The script points out two main ways to go about it. You can either comment on something around you, or you can ask some open-ended questions.
Okay, so like if you're at a cafe, you might say something like, wow, this place is always packed.
Right. Or have you tried their new coffee blend? Something like that.
It's like you're acknowledging that you're both in that same space together.
Exactly. It's subtle, but it can be a really effective way to break the ice.
Okay, now, what about those open-ended questions? The script talks about how important they are, but it doesn't really get into why they're so great. What do you think?
That's a good point. I think it's because open-ended questions, they invite the other person to actually share something about themselves, not just a yes or no answer.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like instead of asking, do you like music, you could ask, what kind of music are you into?
Exactly. It encourages them to open up a bit, share a little piece of themselves.
It's like you're giving them the stage, right? Letting them take the spotlight.
Yeah, I like that. And, when people talk about stuff they're passionate about, they really light up.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where being a good listener comes in, right? The script mentions saying things like, oh, that's interesting, or tell me more about that. But sometimes, I don't know, those phrases can sound kind of empty if you're not actually engaged. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like you're reading from a script, not really connecting with what they're saying.
Exactly. You've got to be present in that moment, really listening and reacting authentically.
Absolutely. It's about being curious, wanting to learn more about the other person.
So, okay, let's say you've successfully started a conversation. How do you keep it going? Keep that momentum.
The script's big on follow-up questions, which makes total sense.
Yeah, but what makes them so good at keeping that conversational ball rolling?
Well, think about it. When you ask a good follow-up question, you're showing that you're actually paying attention and that you're interested.
Oh, that's such a good point. It's like a way of saying, hey, I hear you. Keep talking.
Exactly. Like the script says, if someone mentions they went hiking, don't just say, oh, cool. You could ask, where did you go? Or what was your favorite part?
Yeah, those questions invite them to tell you more about their experience. You're showing that you care about what they have to say.
Yeah, it's all about deepening that connection.
And that brings up another thing. The script mentions reciprocity, but doesn't really explain it. Can you unpack that a bit? Why is it important to share something about yourself during these chats?
Right. Reciprocity is all about balance. It's like you're saying, I'm not just here to interview you, I'm willing to share too.
So it's not just a one-way street.
Exactly. When you share something about yourself, you're showing that you're open and vulnerable, which makes the other person feel more comfortable doing the same.
It builds trust. It turns it into a real exchange, not an interrogation.
Right. Which is something else the script warns against. Don't bombard them with questions. It can feel really intrusive.
It's about finding that balance between being interested and respecting their boundaries. Engaging, not overwhelming, right?
Absolutely. And that's where understanding cultural differences comes in, which is something else the script highlights. Small talk isn't the same everywhere,
Oh, yeah, for sure. It can be so different depending on the culture.
Like in a lot of English-speaking cultures, they favor a light, informal tone. Lots of positivity.
Right, but that's not necessarily true everywhere.
Nope. In some cultures, it's totally normal to jump into more personal topics right away. While in others, that might be considered rude.
So you really need to be sensitive to those cultural differences. It's not just about learning the words, it's about understanding the unspoken rules, too.
Exactly. Like the script says, instead of complaining about bad weather, you could say something like, well, at least it's not snowing.
Right. It's a subtle shift, but it makes a big difference in how you come across.
For sure. And it's not just about what you say. The script also talks about body language. Smiling, making eye contact, putting your phone away, all of that stuff matters.
It's like they're the punctuation marks of a conversation, right? Adding those extra layers of meaning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to have a chat with someone who's staring at their phone, arms crossed, no smile. Not exactly inviting, is it?
It's like talking to a wall. But what about ending a conversation? That can be awkward, too. You know, those, okay, bye moments.
Yeah, definitely. The script recommends using polite closing phrases. Like, in a casual setting, you might say, "It was great talking to you. Enjoy the rest of your day."
That feels so much smoother than just cutting it off, right?
Definitely. And for something more professional, you could say, "I really appreciated your insights. I'll follow up with you later."
So you're leaving a positive impression, even as you're saying goodbye. Okay, so we've covered a lot here. From starting those conversations, keeping them going, to navigating cultural differences. What are some of the key takeaways you'd like listeners to remember about small talk?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to remember that small talk isn't about being perfect. You don't need to have all the right answers.
It's about being present, being curious, being respectful.
Exactly. And as the script emphasizes, it's a skill. It takes practice, just like anything else.
Okay, so you're ready to put all these small talk tips into practice, right? But what about those times when things aren't exactly, sunshine and roses?
Yeah, like what if you're stuck talking about the awful weather or the coffee machine breaks down right as you're about to order?
Exactly. Those are the real tests. How do you keep things positive without sounding, fake?
Well, the script has a really cool strategy for this.
Reframing.
Reframing.
Yeah, it's like putting on those rose-colored glasses even when things aren't so great. Like instead of complaining about the rain, you could say, well, at least it's not snowing.
Uh-huh. I like that. Or you could even throw in a little humor, like, guess I'll be putting my new waterproof boots to the test today.
It's a way of acknowledging the situation without letting it bring you down.
Exactly. And it kind of plays into that can-do spirit that a lot of English-speaking cultures have. It's like you're saying, hey, I'm not going to let a little rain ruin my day.
That makes sense. But is there a risk of, sounding insincere if you're always trying to be positive? Especially if you're actually having a bad day.
That's a good point. I think it's all about finding that balance. Acknowledging reality, but choosing to focus on the brighter side whenever possible.
So it's not about denying negative feelings. It's about choosing to highlight the positive aspects.
Exactly. It's a shift in perspective, not a fake smile.
Sure.
And this positive vibe, it goes beyond just our words, too. It's also about our body language.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, have you ever tried talking to someone who's totally glued to their phone, arms crossed, barely making eye contact?
It's like talking to a brick wall.
It is. It's the opposite of inviting.
Right. And that's why the script emphasizes those nonverbal cues. Smiling, eye contact, putting your phone away. They all matter.
It's like you're saying, hey, I'm here with you. I'm actually interested in what you have to say.
Exactly. And those nonverbal cues, they become even more important when you're dealing with cultural differences, which we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah, because what's considered polite in one culture might be totally different in another.
Right. The script mentioned how a lot of English-speaking cultures go for that light, informal, positive tone during small talk.
But that's not universal, right? Like in some cultures, it's actually more normal to get into personal stuff right away.
Exactly. So it's really important to be sensitive to those differences. It's like learning a new dance, You got to understand the steps and the rhythm before you can really move gracefully on the dance floor.
I like that analogy. But even with all these tips, sometimes small talk just feels awkward, Especially when you're still learning English.
Oh, absolutely. Remember, it's a skill. It takes time and practice, just like learning a musical instrument. At first, the notes might sound kind of shaky, but the more you practice, the smoother and more beautiful the music becomes.
So it's not about being perfect right away. It's about gradually building that confidence and fluency.
Yeah. It's about embracing those awkward moments as opportunities to learn and grow. And the more you practice, the less you'll have to think about the rules, and the more natural it'll feel.
It'll become more like second nature, right?
Exactly. And just think, the next time you're at that cafe or waiting for a meeting to start, you can use these tips to strike up a conversation, connect with someone new, maybe even brighten their day a little.
It's true. Even those small interactions can have a big impact. And speaking of impact, we've talked a lot about being curious during small talk, but I'd love to hear you dive a little deeper into that. Why is it so important to go beyond just going through the motions?
Well, think about it. Have you ever talked to someone who, like, asked all the right questions, but their eyes totally glazed over while you were talking? Or they seem more interested in their phone?
Oh, yeah, it's like they're just waiting for their turn to speak, not really listening to what you're saying.
Exactly. And that's why being authentic is so important. The script doesn't explicitly say it, but it's kind of woven throughout. The best conversations, the ones that really stick with you, come from a place of genuine interest.
So it's not about pretending to care about someone's weekend plans if you really couldn't care less.
Right. It's about picking topics that actually spark your curiosity, asking follow-up questions because you actually want to know more, being present in that moment.
It's about seeing small talk as a chance to connect, learn, maybe discover something new.
Exactly. Because you never know. Sometimes those seemingly small conversations can lead to the most meaningful connections.
It's true. You never know who you'll meet. And remember, you don't have to be a social butterfly to be good at small talk. It's a skill that anyone can learn and improve with practice.
And the rewards are definitely worth it. Small talk can open so many doors to new friendships, job opportunities, just feeling more comfortable in your community. So how about we take a moment to reflect on everything we've covered so far? What's really resonating with you?
As we've been talking about all these small talk strategies, I've been thinking about how it all ties together. It's not just about techniques or phrases. It's about creating these ripples of positivity and connection.
It really is. What's so interesting is how small talk can actually contribute to a greater sense of community. Like those quick chats you have throughout the day with the barista, someone on the train, a colleague in the hallway.
Yeah, yeah.
Those little moments can really make someone's day, make them feel seen.
Absolutely.
And when you approach those chats with real warmth, it can create a sense of belonging, not just for them, but for you too.
It's like you're weaving a social fabric, one conversation at a time. And our source is all about helping people get better at speaking English, but these ideas of connection and positivity, those are universal, right?
Totally. It doesn't matter what language you speak or where you're from, we all need that connection.
Yeah.
And small talk, when it's done right, it can really help bridge those gaps between people.
It's like a reminder that we're all human, even in those quick, everyday interactions. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle back to something we mentioned earlier. That idea of being genuinely curious and interested during small talk.
Yeah, that's so important because think about it. Have you ever had a conversation with someone who asked all the right questions, but their eyes were kind of glazed over, or they kept checking their phone?
Ugh, yeah. It's like they're just waiting for their turn to talk, not really listening at all.
Exactly. And that's why authenticity matters so much. The script doesn't come right out and say it, but it's there. Those conversations that really stick with you, they come from a place of real interest.
So it's not about pretending to be interested in something you're not.
Right. Pick topics you're actually curious about. Ask questions because you really want to know more. Be present in that moment.
Treat those conversations like little adventures.
Yeah.
Chances to connect, learn something new. Who knows what you'll discover?
Exactly. Because sometimes those small conversations can lead to some really big connections.
So, to everyone listening, whether you're a small talk pro or you're still figuring it out, remember, every conversation is a chance to make a positive impact.
Even if you stumble over your words or feels a little awkward, the fact that you're trying to connect, that's what matters.
And as you keep practicing and getting better at small talk, we want to leave you with a question. How can understanding small talk in English-speaking cultures help you? Not just in casual chats, but in your personal and professional life too. Keep that question in mind as you keep practicing your conversation skills.
And remember, the key is to practice, experiment, and most importantly, be yourself. The more you have those real conversations, the more confident you'll become.
That's it for our deep dive into the art of small talk. We had a blast exploring this with you. Until next time, keep those conversations going, keep making those connections, and remember, even small talk can have a big impact.